My name is Captain Claire Hartley. I'm 34 years old, and on a Tuesday morning in May, I was called to a formal ceremony and given a medal for saving 4 lives in an operation I have no memory of. I shook the general's hand, I accepted the medal, I stood in front of 60 people, and I smiled. Then I went back to my office and I sat at my desk and I thought about the 7 minutes of that ceremony where I had stood at attention while a citation was read aloud describing in precise detail an operation that I had no recollection of conducting. Not a partial memory, not the fragmented recall that fatigue or stress sometimes produces. Nothing. No memory of the location, no memory of the date, no memory of 4 people whose lives I had apparently saved at significant personal risk on a night in February that I could not place in my calendar, no matter how hard I tried. I opened my service record on my secure terminal. The operation was there, logged, dated, February 14th. Signed off by my commanding officer, Major Daniel Webb. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something that took me 11 minutes to decide to do. I found the names of the 4 people I had supposedly saved, and I emailed all 4 of them.
Let me tell you who I am first. I am a combat search and rescue officer. I have been one for 10 years. My job is to go into difficult places and bring people out. I have done it 23 times in 10 years, across 4 different operational theaters. I remember every single one. Not perfectly, not in cinematic detail, but I remember the essential facts of each operation. The location, the conditions, the people I extracted, the decisions I made under pressure. Memory is not optional in my work. Accurate recall is a professional requirement. Debriefs depend on it. Reports depend on it. The safety of future operations depends on the accuracy of what I remember about past ones. I do not forget operations. I have never forgotten an operation, which either meant something had happened to my memory that I was not aware of, or the operation on February 14th had not happened the way my service record said it happened. Both possibilities were serious. The second one was worse. The object that I kept returning to throughout the next 3 weeks was the medal itself, a service cross, silver, the citation engraved on the back. For conspicuous gallantry in the conduct of a search and rescue operation resulting in the preservation of 4 lives at significant personal risk, February 14th. I turned it over in my hands that first evening for a long time. It was real. The weight was right. The engraving was correct. The presentation box was standard issue. Someone had gone to significant trouble to make this medal exist. That was the detail that mattered most. Not that I had received it, but that someone had arranged for me to receive it, had written the citation, had briefed the general, had put my name on an operation in my service record. Someone had built something around my name. The question was what they had built it for. The 4 emails went out at 6:47 p.m. on Tuesday evening. I kept them short. I identified myself by rank and name. I said I was conducting a routine follow-up on a February extraction operation and would appreciate a brief response confirming the contact details I had on file were correct. I did not mention the medal. I did not mention that I had no memory of the operation. I waited. The first response came at 9:12 p.m. Sergeant First Class David Okafor, one of the 4 names on the citation. He wrote, "Captain Hartley, I think there may be some confusion. I was not involved in any extraction operation in February. I have been stationed at Fort Benning since January and have not been in any operational theater this year. Could you clarify which operation you are referring to?" I read it twice. Then I replied, "Thank you, Sergeant. I will follow up with the administrative team. Apologies for the confusion." The second response came at 11:34 p.m. Corporal Reyes, another name from the citation. She wrote, "I'm not sure who gave you my name in connection with a February operation, but I was on medical leave from January through March following knee surgery. I was not deployed anywhere. I'm happy to provide documentation if needed." Medical leave, January through March. I had supposedly extracted her on February 14th, while she was in a hospital recovering from knee surgery. I closed my laptop. I went to the kitchen, I made tea, I stood at the window and drank it, and thought about a medal sitting on my desk in a presentation box. A medal for an operation that had not happened, with my name on it. The third and fourth responses came the next morning, both the same. Neither person had been in any extraction operation in February. One had been in the United States the entire month. One had been on a training exercise in a completely different country.
4 people, all cited in my service record as being rescued by me on February 14th, none of them with any memory of me, none of them having been anywhere near an operational theater in February. I sat at my desk with all 4 responses on my screen. I thought about Major Daniel Webb, who had signed off on the February 14th operation in my service record, who had been my commanding officer for 2 years, who I had trusted completely. I thought about the ceremony, the general's handshake, 60 people watching. Someone had orchestrated this carefully. A false operation in my service record, a medal presented publicly, 4 names of real people who had no connection to the fabricated event. Why? What does a false medal accomplish? I pulled up my service record again. I looked at the February 14th entry more carefully than I had the first time. Then I looked at what came before it and after it, and I found the answer.
2 weeks before February 14th, I had submitted a report, a routine anomaly report, budget irregularities in the logistics division, small discrepancies, the kind that most people would overlook, but that my training had taught me to flag. I had submitted it through proper channels. I had received an acknowledgement. I had assumed it was being handled. I had not thought about it since, until now, because 2 weeks after I submitted that report, someone had added a commendation operation to my service record, had arranged a public medal ceremony, had put my name in front of a general and 60 witnesses. And an officer with a commendation and a medal and a public ceremony is an officer whose record looks exceptional. An officer whose record looks exceptional is an officer who is being positioned for promotion or for something else. An officer who is publicly commended for an operation cannot easily turn around and flag problems in the command structure that commended them. The optics are impossible. The appearance of ingratitude, the suggestion of bad faith. I had been given a medal to buy my silence, not with money, with honor, with a ceremony and a general's handshake and 60 witnesses. Someone had decided that was cleaner than the alternative.
I want to pause here, because understanding that the medal was a trap is the moment this story changed from confusing to terrifying. If you have ever been given something that turned out to be a way of controlling you, drop a comment below. I want to hear it. And subscribe right now, because what I did with that medal in the next 48 hours is the reason the person who gave it to me is no longer serving. I called Colonel Patricia Morrison at 7:15 a.m. on Thursday morning, Inspector General's office, 22 years in military law, second ring. I said, "Colonel, I received a service cross on Tuesday for an operation dated February 14th. I have no memory of this operation. I have contacted all 4 personnel named in the citation. None of them have any knowledge of the operation or of me. All 4 have verifiable documentation, placing them elsewhere on February 14th. Morrison said, "Send me the citation and all 4 responses right now."
I said, already sent. She said, the officer who signed off on the service record entry. I said, Major Daniel Webb. She said, and your anomaly report from late January? I said, I included that in the package. She was quiet for 4 seconds. She said, Captain, I need you to do something that is going to be uncomfortable. I said, tell me. She said, I need you to keep the medal, wear it if required, attend any functions where it might be expected, do nothing that suggests you have any doubts about its legitimacy. I said, you want me to let them think it worked? She said, for 48 hours, yes. I said, what happens in 48 hours? She said, we find out how deep this goes before we move. I said, understood. She said, and Captain, the anomaly report you flagged in January, the budget irregularities. I said, yes. She said, you were right to flag them. They are significantly larger than what you identified. We have been building a case for 4 months. Your report was the piece we needed to connect 2 parts of the investigation. I said, how large? She said, $2.3 million over 18 months, moving through the logistics division into 3 external accounts. $2.3 million. I said, and Webb? She said, Webb is one of 4 officers under investigation. He is not the primary subject. I said, who is? She said, that is what 48 hours will tell us. I wore the medal to the mess dinner on Friday evening. I shook hands, I accepted congratulations, I smiled at people who told me I deserved it. I was convincing. 14 years of operational work teaches you to be convincing in situations that require it. Webb found me near the bar at 8:30 p.m. He said, you looked good up there Tuesday. You earned it. I said, thank you, sir. It was an intense operation. He said, you should be proud. I said, I am. He clinked his glass against mine. He had no idea. Morrison moved at 6 a.m. Saturday. 4 officers arrested simultaneously across 2 bases. Webb was third. He was in his quarters when they came. He did not resist. He had the specific quality of a man who had known this was coming and had simply been waiting for it to arrive. The primary subject was a brigadier general 2 levels above Webb, a man I had met twice, a man who had sat on the committee that approved the medal ceremony. He was arrested at 6:03 a.m. By 8 a.m., all 4 were in custody. Here is what happened in the 9 months that followed. The investigation confirmed $2.3 million moved through the logistics division over 18 months, funds diverted from 3 separate operational budgets, distributed across accounts connected to 2 of the 4 arrested officers and 3 civilian contractors. All 4 officers were convicted. The brigadier general is serving 11 years. Webb is serving 6 years. The other 2 received sentences of 3 and 4 years respectively. The 3 civilian contractors were charged separately. All 3 pleaded guilty. My anomaly report from January, the one I had submitted and forgotten about because I received an acknowledgement and assumed it was being handled, Morrison told me in her final briefing that my report had identified a discrepancy of $47,000. That discrepancy had given investigators the thread they needed to trace the full $2.3 million. $47,000 noticed, $2.3 million recovered. Because I had been trained to flag things that did not add up. The medal is in my desk drawer now. Not displayed, not returned, in the drawer. Morrison asked me once if I wanted it removed from my record. I said no. I said leave it there, with a notation that the underlying operation was fabricated and that the medal was part of an attempt to compromise an officer who had filed an anomaly report. She said, that is an unusual request. I said, I want the record to be accurate. That is all I have ever wanted. She said, then that is what the record will say. The medal is real. The silver is real. The weight is real. The operation was not. But what came out of it was $2.3 million recovered, 4 officers convicted, 3 contractors charged, 1 anomaly report that turned out to matter more than I knew when I filed it. I will take that. Here is what being given a medal for something I did not do taught me. Honor can be used as a trap. Recognition can be a way of buying silence. of making you feel grateful enough and visible enough that raising questions feels ungrateful, that flagging problems feels like biting the hand. But here is the thing about that. The hand that gives you a medal for an operation that did not happen is not a hand worth protecting. The record is what matters, the accurate record, the one that says what actually occurred and what did not. I filed an anomaly report in January because something did not add up. That is all I did. Everything else followed from that one decision. File the report. Every time, even when it seems small, even when you receive an acknowledgement and assume it is being handled, it might be the thread that unravels $2.3 million. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. Same ending every time. She stayed calm, she stayed quiet, then she won.